Bienvenue and welcome to the Education USA pre-departure orientation for Canadian students. I'm your Education USA advisor for Eastern Canada, Jenica Heim. For those of you who have worked with Education USA, I'm so proud of all the hard work and efforts that you've put in to get to this point, and thank you so much for coming today. For those who are unfamiliar with Education USA and our programs, here's a little information you can pass along to your friends and younger siblings. Education USA is a U.S. Department of State network of more than 400 international student advising centers in 180 countries. The network promotes U.S. higher education to students around the world by offering accurate, comprehensive, and current information about opportunities to study at accredited post-secondary institutions in the United States. You can learn more about the network at educationusa.state.gov. Here in Canada, we currently have 3 Education USA advisors. Besides myself, we have Zhao Ying and Hung, who will jump on and give a quick introduction for themselves. Zhao Ying.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zhao Ying. I am the Education USA advisor based in Vancouver, BC, and I support students in all Western Canada. And I'll pass it over to my colleague, Han.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hung Lu. I'm based in Toronto. I advise students in GTA and Southern Ontario. I'll pass it back to Jenica.
Thank you, Hung. And Hung will actually be departing Education USA at the end of this month. Thank you, Hung, for all the work you put in and all the help that you've given to students who are joining us here today. You will be missed. And oh yes, if there's the little emojis on the bottom, I see someone put in a clap. So please feel free to use those throughout to show your support. So thank you so much for your time with us, and you will be missed. All of us at Education USA would like to congratulate you on your decision to study in the United States. Today's webinar is not only a presentation with some pretty important tips, but also a true celebration of your accomplishments and the next steps on your academic journey. We are fortunate today to be joined by 2 distinguished guests from the U.S. Embassy. Nathan Bloor from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, International Affairs at the U.S. Embassy will be joining us a little later with information about crossing the border. And we'll even have a little bit of time with him for questions. Up first, we're joined by Christina Higgins, the Minister Counselor for Public Diplomacy at the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa. Christina Higgins has supported U.S. embassies throughout Europe, Eurasia, Africa, and North America. She has served in Canada, Djibouti, Angola, France, Senegal, and Jerusalem. Prior to joining the U.S. Diplomatic Corps, she worked at the U.S. Department of Education in public schools as a foreign language teacher. A highlight of that time was her year in Leipzig teaching English at a local high school under the Fulbright Teacher Exchange Program. Thank you so much for joining us, Christina.
Thank you, Jenica. And I've passed my first test. I unmuted successfully. So this is a good omen. I do want to say good evening and start by saying hello and congratulations to all the amazing students and our student athletes joining us this evening. Special shout out also to our Fulbrighters who are with us tonight. I was looking through the guest list, the invitees. You're all going to amazing institutions. You come from such interesting places and you're studying such a wonderful array of topics in areas that we really need to take on the challenges that we have today and that we're going to have in the years ahead. As Jenica stated, I'm the Minister Counselor for Public Diplomacy at the U.S. Embassy here in Ottawa. And in that role, I support Ambassador David Cohen. And I lead the U.S. government efforts to strengthen our people-to-people ties, which is why I'm here tonight, because you will indeed be going in person to strengthen the ties between the peoples of Canada and the peoples of the United States. And so I'm here to support that and to support deepening the understanding between our 2 great nations. Before I was a diplomat, I was a teacher in a middle school, as Jenica mentioned. And so I thought I would start tonight with a little lesson. In Canada, I've learned that there's a technical distinction between a college and a university. And Canadians generally say that they are going off to university unless you're going to a college instead. In America, whether we intend to attend a community college, university, when we're sitting where you are today, we just say, we're heading off to college. He's in college, she's in college, they're in college, it's all college. I tell you this because it's so exciting to see so many of you heading off to college. And it is even more exciting that you've chosen to head off to college in the United States. For many, leaving home to pursue a degree of higher learning marks the transition to adulthood. You're embarking on an amazing adventure of self-discovery, learning, professional development, and we hope personal growth too. For our graduate students in this group, I know this will not be the first time that you're heading off to college. And yes, believe it or not, at the graduate level, we also say they're off at college. It's an adventure nonetheless, one that you began in Canada and that you'll now be continuing in the United States. By choosing to complete your graduate education in the United States, you're seizing the opportunity to dive deeper into your chosen field, hone the skills you develop during your undergraduate education, and develop valuable cross-border professional networks. As Canadian students studying in the United States, and I really do mean this, you will be ambassadors for Canada, helping to strengthen the ties that bind our countries together. Ambassador Cohen often says that the ties that bind the U.S. and Canada are those of family and friends and shared values that span borders and generations. They're ties that strengthen each time relatives traveling from Quebec, Ontario, British Columbia, Manitoba, everywhere in between, visit friends and loved ones in New York, California, Arizona, Michigan, North Dakota, and of course, Florida, when it gets a little too cold up here. They're ties of higher education established by the more than 27,000 Canadian students who last year chose to pursue higher education in the United States, just like you. Our ties include shared values of diverse, free, democratic governments and societies, including our strong belief in the transformative impact of education, both on individuals and on society as a whole. And these are the ties that bind us together. At the embassy, we often use a favorite quote, and in fact, it's etched into marble in one of the areas of the embassy. It's a quote about the U.S.-Canada relationship that says, "Geography has made us neighbors, history has made us friends, economics has made us partners, and necessity has made us allies." Those words are true today, just as they were when President John F. Kennedy spoke them in 1961. Neighbors, friends, partners, and allies, the relationship between the United States and Canada is the strongest bilateral relationship in the world. And Nathan can attest to that. He works very closely with his Canadian counterparts, just as I do every single day. Today, that relationship is based on a framework of cooperation known as the Roadmap of a Renewed U.S.-Canada Partnership. And that was established in 2021 and reaffirmed last March when President Biden visited here in Ottawa. One of the major priorities in the roadmap is the promotion of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. This idea is fundamental to our values as Americans and Canadians, and one that is also a fundamental component of U.S. higher education. Other than Canada, I don't believe that any country can boast more diversity of thought, experience, background, and identity as is found on the more than 4,600 university and college campuses, or just college campuses, around the United States. And speaking of diversity, I want to take this moment to say Happy International Pride Month to everyone on the call. And in the United States, we're also celebrating Immigrant Heritage Month. So happy diversity to everybody. I want to say a special thanks and congratulations to the parents and the loved ones joining tonight. I'm the mother of 3 boys. One recently completed his boot camp training and is serving as a U.S. Marine. He plans to go to college in about 3 years. Another is attending James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, Go Dukes! And my third one is completing high school here in Canada and will soon be making his own decision about where to continue his education. I am a proud UW Wisconsin Badger, and I know I saw at least one person who will be going to the Wisconsin university system. Woohoo! I understand the intense pride that you feel today and the many sacrifices that you have made, and I'm speaking to perhaps our parents and our guardians and our loved ones, our families now. Many of you have made sacrifices and will continue to make those to help your child pursue their education. I'd ask all the students on this call to please join me in a quick round of applause or emoji for all those who have been there to support us and are joining us this evening. Yay! Education in the USA is an opportunity to pursue your passions and your interests. So whatever your idea or identity, it's an opportunity to find your community. When making a choice to study in the United States, we know you have options. I know how strong the Canadian educational system is, with amazing institutions of higher learning from British Columbia to Nova Scotia. You have fantastic choices right here at home. So I know that your decision to study or study and play sports in the United States was an important one for both you and for your loved ones and supporters. But I also know that your decision was made easier, and the process was greatly supported by the amazing work of our Education USA advisors, Jenica Heim. Give it up for Jenica. Zhaojing Hu, and Hong Liu. Thank you to all three of these outstanding educational advisors. I also want to say a special thanks to them for organizing today's events and for their tireless efforts, their creativity, and their dedication to helping Canadian students and their families and supporters navigate the process of pursuing your educational passion in the United States. And of course, the United States will also be richer for having you come and study and help share with us what you bring with as ambassadors for Canada. What I know for a fact is that no country in the world offers more diversity of educational choice and experience, student body, and opportunity than the United States. I encourage you, as you head south for your education, to take advantage of every opportunity to share your experience, the wonderful experience of our great ally, Canada, with your school, your community, your city, your state, and the region, taking advantage of what they also have to offer. My own passion for U.S. higher education comes from the amazing experience, world-class education, and lifelong personal and professional connections which sustain me to this day. I'm very proud to be a member of the board of Fulbright Canada, on which many university presidents sit from both the United States and Canada, and they sustain all the reasons I come to work every day. And I know that your experiences and your passion to go on and learn at an institution of higher education will sustain you as well. So good luck, and thank you again, and congratulations to all.
Thank you so much, Christina, for your inspiring remarks. And you make me want to say, go Aggies. I went to UC Davis. So, so as we get started, we do want folks to ask a lot of questions. So you'll see that there is a Q&A section. It's only an hour long, so we won't be able to answer a lot of them out loud. But if you answer a question in the Q&A chat, we will give you a typed answer to your question. So even if it's not an out loud response, you will have your question answered throughout. I'm now going to pass it over to Zhaoying to talk a little bit about who is joining us today.
Thank you, Jenica. Christina just mentioned the beautiful diversity of U.S. higher education institutions. I want to give you a quick peek of the beautiful diversity in our audience today. So among the 165 registrants when we created this chart, our latest registration, I think, was reaching 190. We have a beautiful diversity from the provinces in Canada. We have all these provinces presented. If you are from the province not presented here, please give us a shout out in the chat, and we would love to know where you are from. We also have a variety of levels of studies that students are pursuing. Most of students who are joining us today are pursuing their bachelor's degree, followed by students who are pursuing master's degree. In terms of the field of studies, we have business and management being the most popular field, followed by engineering and computer sciences. The most popular science major among our registrants is biology, and the most popular social science majors are tied between economics and psychology. If you would like to, I invite you to type up what you are studying in the chat, so we know who are here joining us live. Many of our students joining us today are recruited athletes. Hockey, as no surprise there, continue to be the most popular sport among the recruited athletes. And last but not least, I wanted to give you a peek at where will today's participants study. This is a map of all the states that our registrants are going to study. We have 27 states and Washington, D.C. represented in the destination of our audience today. And I see a lot of chat coming in. Thank you for sharing your field of study. Let's transition now to the heart of today's presentation, where Jenica will discuss how to prepare for your departure to the United States.
Thank you, Jiaoying. So this is being recorded. So if you miss anything, you will receive the recording tomorrow morning, and you can definitely watch all of this again. So as you prepare to depart, the first things that you need to do are to connect with the International Student Services Office at your new university, which might be called the ISSO, ISO, or ISS. And the human who is your main contact is called your designated school official, or DSO. And that is the most important person who you will ask essentially any question you have about transitioning to life on your new campus. That is also the person who will be issuing you your documentation. If you are an F or M status student, so that's a full-time student, you will receive an I-20. If you are an exchange student or a Fulbright student, you will receive a DS 2019. The ISSO person could also potentially help you for if you're a grad student and you need to find off-campus housing, or perhaps you're at a community college that doesn't provide housing. They're a great person to get in contact with to see what sort of resources are available for you. They will also be the ones providing a orientation, usually specifically for international students, and oftentimes a little bit earlier than the one for all students who arrive. So definitely make sure you arrive in time or slightly early to be involved with that. If you've received your I-20 or DS 2019, you need to go online to fmjfee.com to pay your CVIS fee. For F and M students, and M students, just so you know, is like vocational training. I don't think many students here today are engaging in vocational training. Most students would be under an F status. So it's a $350 fee. And then for the J status students, it will be a $220 fee. So go ahead and pay that and print off your receipt, and you'll want to bring that with you over the border. If you haven't yet, please get your passport out and make sure it is valid. You need to travel with a valid passport that won't be expiring anytime very soon. So I recommend getting that updated if you can. When it comes to visas, if you are a Canadian citizen, you're actually exempt from making a visa appointment. So you will not need to make an appointment at one of our consulates or the embassy to study in the United States. If you are a Canadian permanent resident or any other international student or third-party national here in Canada, you will make an appointment with the embassy. There are, or the consulate. There are 7 options across Canada. I checked just a couple hours ago. The center with the quickest wait time is 10 days out in Calgary, and the longest wait time is 94 days in Toronto. So, you know, if you live in Toronto and you need to get a visa, you might want to consider taking a trip to Alberta. And Montreal is still emergency appointment only. So if you live in that area, you make an appointment for another area. And then once you're in the system, you can request an emergency appointment at the Montreal consulate. If you're an American citizen, you will, of course, just cross the border with your American passport. Nothing else to do there. And if you're an Indigenous student here in Canada, there is something called the Jay Treaty that might be applicable to you. You can feel free to reach out to us if you have more questions. But essentially, if you can prove your Indigenous status, then you will not need to be issued an I-20, and you will be treated essentially as a U.S. permanent resident once you go to study in the United States. As you prepare to depart, a couple more things that you'll need to do over the next couple of months. You'll need to secure health insurance. Many universities have their own health insurance plan. I highly recommend that you make things simple and you go with the plan on campus. When you do that, you ensure that you can access all the health resources easily on campus, and they will be within your network. And it will also be the same payment mechanism as your tuition. So it really simplifies things. However, not all universities have insurance plans. So some things you can look into: if you have a secondary health insurance provider in Canada, they may have some sort of travel insurance plan, which makes a lot of sense for more short-term travel. You might have some Canadian private insurance options for traveling students, or you might look into other US private insurance options. The most important thing is to just ask questions about what is provided, what the copay is when you go in for an appointment, what the deductible will be, and if there's anything in particular that is not covered underneath the plan. So for US health insurance, you definitely want something that's as comprehensive as possible in case there's any problems. When it comes to packing and departing, you can enter the US up to 30 days prior to your start date. And if you're driving, you can bring household items along with you. I recommend reviewing the CBP guidance on which items you are allowed and not allowed to take with you over the border. So in review, you'll need your Canadian passport, your I-20 or DS 2019, your CVIS receipt, and I recommend a copy of your proof of funds. This is typically, Nathan will talk more about this, but this is something you'll be showing your university and you can bring along with you. You no longer need a proof of vaccination when crossing the border. The border guards will not require that from you. However, when you arrive at your university might require immunization records, including COVID-19 vaccination record. So it's very important to connect with your DSO to see if there's anything else that's needed from you. I also recommend bringing along any official transcripts you have and copies of personal documents. I call all these documents your important documents. Put them all in a folder, keep them somewhere safe, and keep that with you throughout your journey as a student in the United States. We're now going to pass things over to Nathan. Nathan Bloor is currently serving as a CBP International Officer with International Affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa. Nathan has more than 14 years of experience with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, including assignments in Montreal and the Port of Entry in Champlain, New York. Nathan's a graduate of Calvin University in Michigan and holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Please welcome Nathan.
Yeah, hi everybody. Nate Bloor. Thanks for the intro, Jenica. I'm an officer with U.S. Customs and Border Protection here at the embassy in Ottawa with International Affairs. Prior to this, I began my career at the land border in Champlain, Port of Entry, and then went up to Montreal Airport, Ottawa Airport, and then spent some time at headquarters in Washington, D.C., and now back in Ottawa. So as you can see, I'm a fan of Canada, and I tell you this experience more or less just to let you know that I've spent a lot of time processing students, initial students and exchange visitors, so I know what our officers are looking for. And so my goal here really is to just prepare you for that border crossing, specifically the initial border crossing, to receive your status, your student status in your processing of CBIS forms. So welcome and congrats to everybody. I should have started off with that, and I hope you take advantage of this opportunity to go to school in the U.S. and make the best of the experience. So let's get to it. I just want to, like I said, prepare you for what to expect when you cross the border. Jenica touched base on quite a few of the documents that you need, but just to reiterate, since it is important, when you're making your initial entry, what you need to have is your passport, which needs to be valid. You need to have your CBIS forms, which is either your I-20 if you're an F1 or DS 2019 if you're a J1 exchange visitor. And then we're also looking for that proof that your initial CBIS fee was paid. It's just a one-time fee, but you need those 3 items: passport, CBIS forms, and proof of payment for your initial entry, but for every entry. So when you do end up going back home for Christmas or the holidays, each time you cross the border, the officers will be looking for those documents. Jenica touched on, proof of your resources and ability to pay your living expenses. It's not so much, you don't need to worry about that. The CBIS form, since that was initiated, takes care of a lot of that because there's a section on that form that specifically relays the information to us about your resources and your funds given by the school. So wouldn't worry too much about that. So whether you cross the border in the land mode or the airport, the process is the same. You'll approach the officer at the booth, either in the airport or if you're driving, you drive up to the booth, and it really is simple. You just state your name. Your intention is to make entry to the U.S. as a student, and you're traveling to this state to attend this program at this university. And here are my documents: passport, CBIS forms, proof of CBIS payment. Anything else, don't worry about. You don't need to prepare yourself for. Our officers will ask any additional questions that we need to know. So don't waste your time prepping for that, in a sense. As far as what you're bringing into the U.S., do you have anything to declare? Any past issues? Our officers will ask any relevant questions if they're relevant to the traveler. The initial entry, we have to verify your CBIS status is you're in good standing with the school, and it takes a little bit longer to initially process that and then to eventually issue the admission class, F1 or J1. So, the recommendation is to show up 2 hours prior to your flight, show up 2.5 hours to give a little extra time for processing. Normally, most of the times, all the processing will be done on primary right at that booth. Occasionally, you'll be referred to secondary to complete the inspection. If that happens to you, don't get nervous. Don't worry. It's completely normal. Depending on the port of entry that you make entry to the U.S. and the passenger volumes and things like that, sometimes the port infrastructure and protocols are to process students or people that need visas in a secondary environment. So don't stress. The important thing is have your documents ready. One of the things we call fumble time is when somebody's been standing in line for 45 minutes and they get to the booth and they don't have their documents ready. So that just slows things down. And that is a scenario where you might find yourself in secondary because we have to keep, processing people. So have your documents ready. Once you're admitted, if you complete the inspection, you'll be admitted into the U.S. as a student. From that moment, you'll be issued an I-94 will be generated. The I-94 is an admission number that's unique to you, and that's generated upon admission. It used to be when the stamp hits the passport, you get the stamp. We don't do that anymore. It's there's no more ink. It's all electronic. So you most likely won't happen. But the I-94 is important. It's generated, and it's your proof while you're in the U.S. that you entered legally through a legal port of entry. and it's your proof of status while you're here as a student. So if you're encountered by immigration in the U.S. and you need to prove your valid status, that's your proof. Also, other scenarios, if part of your program is like a work-study program and you require employment and you need a social security number in the U.S., they will also accept the I-94 as your legal proof of status. Or if you need to apply for a driver's license, depending on the state, the DMV, they might require your proof of status, which is your I-94. So bring your documents every time. Don't check them in your bag, have them in hand. Jenica already mentioned you cannot make entries as a student 30 days in advance of your program start date. If you want to go to Disney World tomorrow and you're going to school in the fall, don't worry about the school. You'll be admitted as a visitor. Don't bring any of these documents we just talked about except your passport. And make sure that when you're making that initial entry as a student, it's within 30 days of your program start date. Let me just move along here. An important tool that we have for information, cbp.gov in the top left. You'll see this is our website, and this has all of our port of entries listed. So basically, once you map out your route of travel to the U.S., whether it's air or land, you can click on the state that you're making entry in, and that'll pull up all the port information, contact information, port hours, things like that. So if you have any specific questions that are a little more unique, what kind of food can you bring? What kind of animals can you bring? What certificates? Things like that. I would recommend calling the port ahead of time to ask those questions to be prepared prior to your travel. Another reminder is, as far as your CBIS forms, periodically through your course, your DSO, as Jenica mentioned, your designated school official, will issue you new CBIS forms, usually every year, sometimes every semester, and definitely if you change schools or change courses, you'll be issued a new I-20. So make sure you bring that with you because we want to see the most updated correspondence from the school showing us that you are in good status with the school when you continue to make entry. A couple other things just to touch on is as far as importing a car, sometimes that comes up in these forums. Generally speaking, as a student, you're a non-immigrant, you don't need to import your car. So if you're just taking your car down, you don't usually need to worry about it. The actual criteria is if the car will be in the U.S. permanently for more than 6 months at a time, then it's a requirement. But basically, if you're going to bring the car back to Canada after your school, you don't need to worry about importing a car. But if you have questions on that, again, I would point you towards the port of entry, and they can answer those questions for you. If you're a trusted traveler, if you're a Nexus card member or a global entry member, you can still use the benefits in the lane. I would just recommend that on your initial entry, if you're in the airport, the trusted traveler area has kiosks, and you won't see the student classification because you haven't yet been issued that classification. So I would encourage you on your initial entry to see an officer through the regular line. And once you're admitted as a student and you're issued the I-94 with the F1 or the J1 classification attached, you can then add that to your profile. Last couple of things I'll touch on is additional resources. I'll start with the bottom one. The CBP One app is a great tool because it actually includes some of the other links here. It's a free app that you can download on your phone. It'll keep track of your I-94, your border crossing history, and then also there's a border wait time. So when you are making entry anytime, you can check ahead of time to see what the wait times are. And then there's also other information to know before you go, help centers, things like that. So if the passport needs to be valid, you can renew in the U.S. If you do, if it's going to expire, there's Canadian consulates and embassies within the U.S., or you can apply when you're back in Canada. But just as long as your passport is valid during the time you're in the U.S., you are generally okay. So I'll leave that there. See Jenica on, and if there's any questions, we can address those as they come in.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and take a couple questions, and any we don't get to, Nathan and his colleague Rebecca will help answer those in the chat. So a follow-up on the Nexus question is, once somebody is a student, can they apply for a Nexus card at that point?
Sure. Being a student has no does not make you ineligible for the program. So you certainly can apply as a student.
What are limits on items you can bring when you drive into the United States?
So there are some restrictions, like particularly with some agricultural products, produce, depending on what different bans are going on. Occasionally there's meat bans, things like that. So, generally perishables or produce, things like that for food, I would stay away from because they are the ones that there are bans, periodically. But that is a question that, if you have any concerns about items that you're bringing in, I would call a port of entry prior to making entry and specifically ask about those items.
Yeah, and I think one that we bring up sometimes is even if you're crossing into a state that allows for it's legal to have marijuana or paraphernalia related to marijuana, you cannot cross the border with. So even if you're going from BC to Washington, you can't cross the border with marijuana or paraphernalia. So that's an important one to point out. But other than that, and then like things like open alcohol, things like you also can't fly with too, right?
Just to touch on the narcotics piece, sure. Regardless of what's legal in the states or legal in the provinces, narcotics of any amount are still illegal by federal law. So do not bring those across the border or attempt to bring those across the border.
The other one that I always, potted plants is another big one that like don't just leave those at home, right?
It's generally best just because of the soil and some of the bugs and things like that. You might generate some interest from our agricultural specialists who might cause a problem. If it's not a real plant, you're good. But if there's soil, they might take it from you. So best to leave it home.
Yeah. Okay. So one more quick one, and then I think we'll have you do the rest in the Q&A area. I have a CVIS payment confirmation. Does this serve as both my CVIS form and payment confirmation, or do I need a separate proof of payment?
So if that's your I-901 form that you're referring to, that is your proof that you paid the CVIS fee. So that's one part of it. But we need to see that I-20 or that DS 2019 that is our communication with the actual school that you're in good standing with them and you're enrolled in the program. So you need both of those.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much, Nathan. And do feel free, everyone, to keep asking your border questions in Q&A, and Nathan will help answer them.
All right. Good luck to everyone. Pleasure being here.
We are now going to transition into, after you've crossed the border, you're now going to make your way to your new home. I'm going to turn it over to Hung, who is going to talk to you a little bit about some tips for arriving on campus.
Thanks, Jenica. It must be exciting when you finally arrive on the campus and about to start your new life as a university student. So when you arrive on campus, you do want to check in with ISSO, which is the International Student Services Office. At some schools, it might be called International Student and Scholars Office, but it's usually a similar name because that is the office that specifically work with international students and scholars, so people like you. You can get a lot of useful tips, and they have a lot of handouts at the counter. When you move in and you want to talk to your roommates and go to the orientations usually a week long with a lot of activities. Some of them are for everybody, so everyone who is a first-year student, and there are also one or a few sessions for international students just like you. So during those sessions, they'll talk about visa-related issues, working on campus. You will need to set up your transportation, for example, your bus card, your bike. At a lot of schools, during all week, you will get your school shuttle bus card. You will also get your student ID, which is usually a card that you can use to swipe into the library or to cafeteria. learning accommodations if needed. So if you need any kind of support, you have learning difficulties, you can always talk to the student life, and they will help you to get accustomed to the academic life there. Bank account, you might want to set up a bank account if you don't have a cross-border service that you sign up for in Canada. Having an American bank account allows you to use bank services instead of carrying cash everywhere. Cell phone, it's very essential. You can talk to your friends and contact teachers if needed. The second thing is about just the second slide is about the elaboration on banking options. You can either set up an account in Canada. A lot of major Canadian banks do offer US dollar accounts. So that means you don't need to pay transfer fees from Canadian to USD. And it's always available. It's usually available at a lot of the major Canadian banks. You just go ahead and pick one that will work for you. You can also set up an account once you are in the States. Usually there's on-campus credit union, or major US bank usually has one or a few branches on or near campus. Talk to the international student office or talk to older students like a residential advisor, and they will help you. The next thing you want to know is what are the documents you need to bring to open an account. So it's always important to bring a passport and your I-20 or DS 2019 and I-94 record to prove that you are a full-time international student in the States. Second form of ID would be either your driver's license, for example, Canadian driver's license, or birth certificate, so anything with your photo on it and it's government issued. Your proof of address, which can be, your bank account, if you have one, or you can have anything like your gas or water bill or anything has your address on it that's sent to you. Social security number would be the evidence to prove that you are making money in the States legally. So not all banks will require that because it's kind of self-explanatory when you just arrive in the States and you want to open an account. And if you haven't received money from any employer in the States, you won't have an SSN. Cell phone is another thing I want to talk about. So you could either bring your Canadian cell phone and add a US travel add-on, or you can get a pay-as-you-go, which is prepaid, or you can get a SIM card and put it into your phone, or getting a virtual SIM card so you don't have to open your phone and put it in, or you can sign a contract. It's usually 2 years long, and they may ask you for your SSN or ask you for a deposit. But the benefit of that is that once you sign a contract, you might get a phone at a discounted price, or maybe it comes with a contract. Now I want to talk about preparing to be a successful student. You have your basic needs accounted for, and then I'll pass it to my colleague Jiaying for tips on being a successful student.
Thank you, Han. If you are going to the US for your first bachelor's degree, things might feel very different compared to your high school. Depending on your school, you might be attending lectures with hundreds of other students. What you will find, though, on most US campuses is the Socratic-style discussions that will take place in different formats. It could be a tutorial session in a small group after the big lecture, or it could be the format of all of your classes if you're attending a small college. Here, I want to stress that time management is going to be really critical for your success in the college, and you will have to quickly learn how to prioritize. I want to repeat a lot of the things Jenica already said, but there are a lot of resources and support available on campuses, and I highly encourage you to locate and familiarize yourself with these services and resources as soon as you get to campus. Here are some additional tips. If you're living on residence, which most of you will do, probably if you are going for your first bachelor's degree, most of the US universities or colleges will require first-year students to live on campus, and you'll probably have 1 or 2 roommates. It's really important to set some roommate ground rules. If this is your first time living with roommates, check out our Instagram tomorrow for some really useful tips on setting roommate boundaries. And then just be open to new experiences and enjoy these new experiences. It's going to take a lot of planning. And like I said, time management is going to be key. But I'm sure you will quickly find your way around the campus. Here are some additional guides and tips around campus health and safety. I won't repeat anything here, but one thing I will make sure to remind you is to check if the university or college you are going to have any continuing COVID protocols. There were some questions in the chat. At the border, it's not required to show your proof of COVID boosters, but make sure you check with your university to see if they have any specific requirements. To make the most of your time as a student, I'm sure many of you are interested in using your new skills in the workforce. I will now hand it back to Hong for more information on work and training options.
Thanks, Zhaoying. I'm sure excited to start studying in the States, and then meanwhile, you want to gain some hands-on experience. So the good news is, as international students, you are allowed to work on campus for up to 20 hours per week during the school year and up to 40 hours per week during breaks. So that's summer and winter breaks. In addition, you, as a full-time international student, you are eligible to apply for CPT and OPT. So the CPT is called Curriculum Practical Training. It's similar to co-op. It means you can apply for CPT to be used for internships for credit as part of your graduation requirement. So it has to be related to your major, and it's either required or encouraged. So you do want to check with the right people, usually the advisor or student services person at your school. And then get that CPT before you seek off-campus opportunities. The OPT optional practical training is for paid training, typically used after program completion. So for anyone who graduated from an accredited degree program, they get 12-month-long OPT. If you graduated from a STEM major, you get additional 24 months, making it a total of 3 years after you graduate. And for OPT, you don't need to, there is no restriction on the number of hours or number of jobs you can work on. Next thing is about the tax ID number or social security number, SSN. So if you plan to engage in paid work, you will need an SSN so that the government knows that you're paid legally, you're paid, and you will file for tax. So you do need to work with, again, ISSO, the International Student Services Office, to obtain your SSN from the U.S. government. You do want to see requirements at local center at this website, ssa.gov. You will also need an employment offer letter to receive that, to prove that, yes, you have been offered this paid opportunity and thus need an SSN. Taxes. So if you're working, you will need to file federal and state taxes. So as long as you're making money, you do need to pay for your tax. And the form that summarizes your annual earnings is called a W-2. Usually taxes are due April 15th of each year. So you do want to work with your ISSO to see if there are resources to assist you with tax filing. Like maybe it's the first time filing tax and you're not familiar with everything. So you can always book appointments, like advising sessions, either in a group or as or one-on-one, to get your questions answered. Scholarships that are considered income, for example, if part of your scholarship or all of your scholarship goes to your rent or food or personal costs, sometimes you get a full rate scholarship, please do remember that they're taxable. So you do need to report them. Right. Next, we are happy to now answer a few of your questions about setting in the States. And due to time restrictions, we probably won't get to every question, but we will send follow-up emails to anyone whose question goes unanswered. I'll pass it back to Janica.
Thank you, Hung. And we've been diligently answering questions in the Q&A area. So one that's coming through is about driver's licenses. Can I use my driver's license from Canada in the United States, or do I need to get a US driver's license once I arrive? So once you establish residency in the US, you do need to get a driver's license in the United States if you plan to drive there. You may use your BC or other provincial license for a short period of time, but if you're there for a 4-year degree, you absolutely need to get a local driver's license, which means you're going to have the good fortune of going to the DMV, one of the most fun places on earth. If you've seen, I believe it's Madagascar, the sloths did get it right. So you get the joy of doing that. There's been a couple of questions about work, and that was just covered. So hopefully all of that, all of your questions have been answered around employment and OPT time. Oh, Zootopia. Thank you, Zhao Ying. My God. All right, back to the Q&A. You cannot apply for a social security number while you're in Canada. You can only do that when you're in the United States. If you do want to get a part-time job, I recommend connecting with your DSO, remember, designated school officer, letting them know a little bit more about your interests of wanting to work and seeing if you can get lined up with a job as you get started on campus, because then you'd be able to apply for that social security number right when you get to school. Let's see. Just double checking. It seems like more are coming. When and where do you pay the CVIS fee? So you will pay the CVIS fee online at the website fmjfee.com. And one of my colleagues will go ahead and throw that in the chat for you. Once you've received your I-20 document, you can go online to that website and pay your CVIS fee. You can pay it a day before you drive over the border. It's a digital system, so the fee will it will, go through right away. I don't recommend waiting till the last minute, but the point being, if you haven't received your I-20 yet and you get it next month, you'll still be fine to pay it in time. So a question, I've received the I-20 and have signed it. Is it necessary for me to return it to my school via email? I do not believe you need to do that. You just need to bring it with you over the border, and then you will, I believe you're supposed to sign it when at the border or when you arrive. Nathan, can you confirm when the I-20 needs to be signed, or do you expect it to be signed when they cross the border?
Sure, you can sign it as long as it's signed prior to crossing the border. You don't need to sign it in our presence.
Okay, got you. Thank you for that. And then when they arrive on campus, then their DSO will also sign the form. If the school is small and doesn't have on-campus jobs, can you work off-campus? You cannot work off-campus. You can only, you can use curricular practical training time to do an internship off-campus if that's part of your program. And there is potential for that to be paid work. But otherwise, you cannot work at the coffee shop down the street. Canadians can only work up to 20 hours per week on campus. Let's see. If you're working to fulfill financial aid requirements, you get a social security number. Yes, you will. What if I commute after every semester? Would I need an American driver's license? You should get one. If you are driving regularly in the United States, you should get an American driver's license. Do I need to pay a new CVIS fee for every year of my degree? No. So the CVIS fee covers the entire length of your degree as it is outlined on your I-20 form. So once you pay that fee, you don't need to keep paying it annually. Can you work in the summer months off campus? No, you cannot. You can work on campus up to 40 hours per week during break time. So during the summer, you can actually get a full-time job on campus, but you can only work off campus through the training mechanisms, either CPT or OPT. So the only way typically you could work off campus if it was through a curricular practical training, so an internship that would be part of your degree. So if that exists, say for example, you're part of an engineering program that has co-op terms, that would be done off campus, paid labor, and that would be part of your CPT. So it is possible through certain mechanisms, but you have to work with your designated school officer to make sure that the kinds of internship and work you want to do is allowed as part of your international student status. All right, so we've got only 5 minutes remaining. I know this is a very quick session. So we are going to go ahead and move along to our congratulations and award section. And I don't know if you've noticed, hopefully you have for the students who are here, but throughout the slides, we have been highlighting students who are here today with their name, their university they'll be attending, as well as their majors that they'll be engaging in. So hopefully you've been noticing that on each slide. Congratulations to those students, and we'll say it again in a minute. But really quickly, we have 3 awards that we want to give out to our students. So Education USA, we provide one-on-one and group advising services, just to give a little background of kind of what we do. So throughout the year, we have many informational webinars, including our essay writing bootcamp, university showcases, and also our mentorship program. When working with students individually, Education USA assists with creating university lists, filling out application and editing essays, as well as general advice throughout the process. And although many of you deserve a shout out today, I'm just going to go ahead and highlight the success and the enthusiasm of 3 Education USA students that we've worked with this year. So the first award goes to the student who's been working with Education USA the longest. So I went ahead and polled all the students who are going to be going to the States this year and looked at the dates when we first initially started working together. So this particular student reached out back in November of 2020 as a grade 10 student to express her interest in studying in the United States. And she never lost sight of that dream. She worked diligently. She worked tirelessly on her applications, and she joined our mentorship program to support, help her along the way. She'll be studying at Tufts University this fall due to all of that amazing hard work. Go ahead and give it up to Madison Page. Good job, Madison. Really proud of you. The next award goes to our editor-in-chief. Editor-in-chief is the person who's had one of the most memorable essays. I won't try to summarize the whole thing, but essentially the student dealt with years and years of orthodontic work, and during the pandemic did not have access to her orthodontist. And in her essay, she describes how she did the dental procedure on her own teeth. She must have impressed the admissions officers as well, because she will be going to the University of Southern California this fall. Let's give it up for Serena Haber, our editor-in-chief, with one of the most fabulous essays that I've read. And lastly, our advising all-star. This is a student who engaged with the most Education USA activities this last year. From the essay writing bootcamp to the virtual fair to our mentorship program, this student did it all. She was at every webinar she could make it to. And we had 13 advising sessions together. So she even was the student that I'm pretty sure I had the most advising sessions with. And this shaped her essay and made it shine, made it sparkle. And all that work definitely paid off, because she will be going to the University of Pennsylvania this fall. Give it up for Ilan Martin Prashad. Congratulations, Ilan. You are the advising all-star of the year. And as we wrap up, I want to say a special congratulations to the Fulbright students who've joined us tonight. Fulbright students participate in the prestigious flagship U.S. government exchange program by enrolling in graduate studies or leading a research program in the United States. You can follow at Fulbright Canada for announcements related to what our Fulbrighters will be doing over the next year and learning more about other Fulbright Canada programs. And finally, here's those students who gave their pictures to be highlighted today. So thank you to you. Thank you to all the other students who joined us today. Congratulations. You are taking a thrilling next step to pursue an exciting future. Please make sure that you stay in touch. And if you have any more questions about studying in the States in the future, which does happen, we can absolutely help you. You can join our LinkedIn group. You can see the pop-up that's just jumped up here now, and stay connected to us there. And lastly, the other thing is that we will be having a webinar next week. So we'll throw, Jiaoying, can you throw that pop-up? Great. So transitioning to college, we're going to have 5 of our alumni who worked with Education USA and who are now studying in the States talk about what it was like transitioning to college. So all those questions you had about banking and working and all that stuff, you can ask students who are there right now experiencing it. So hopefully you'll sign up for that and we'll see you there. Best of luck to everyone, and one more congratulations. Have an excellent evening and safe travels.